Ready to master IT skills? Explore all the educates now and transform your tech knowledge in no time. Jump in and give your career a new boost.
In today's video, like we promised in our previous video, we'll be looking into IFrames, and along with IFrames we'll also be looking into different other web elements and how those could be handled. So to handle IFrames, I'm going to start working with another test case. So the procedure remains the same. I just give my code an annotation to @test. I start with the public void, let's name it handle iframes, throws exception, and that's about it. Now before we could actually work with iframes, it is important to know that what iframes actually are. Now looking at this page, as you can see that there are certain components inside the page, so they are actually page inside a page. You could actually call them that. So now Selenium doesn't, or any other test elements, they do not directly handle these iframes. So the first and foremost, the identification of an iframe is necessary, and that could be located if it's an iframe or not. You just right click on it and you can see that there are options which says reload frame or view frame source, or even if you want to go more technical on it, you can just inspect it, and once you inspect it, an iframe tag would be aligned with it. So that means that this particular component is an iframe. So like I mentioned before, that Selenium code does not really directly handle them. We have to actually go inside or maybe switch to an iframe first, and then we can handle them. Now for as you can see that these on this website we have this sample iframe inside a page. In your career you might find different forms or different web elements that like a slider maybe, or maybe like I said, a form, or different web components that could be placed inside an iframe. So in order to handle them, you cannot just directly find element by XPath or find element by ID them. You have to just go inside them. That means you have to do a switch, run a switch to command, and then those elements will be accessible for you. So and that's what we're going to do today. So first things first, you need to hit the URL that is already done here. Well, this is not the best way to approach this situation. So once I'm going to start working on our framework video, I'll explain how dynamic URLs could be handled easily, right? So but for now, let's look into iframes and how those could be managed. So this URL is going to lead us to this page, and once we get onto this page, the first thing that we need to do is to switch to an iframe. Now remember, I mentioned that in order to work with an iframe, you have to get inside it. You have to switch yourself inside the iframe, and that could be done like this. So you could just do a switch to command here, and dot frame, and every frame would be linked with an ID or an XPath. So let's see, what do we have here? Now there's an iframe. This is not what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for an ID that handles this whole iframe. Let's see if we have something, and there we go. So I found an ID that is associated with this iframe. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to paste it here. Now once I run this command, my crawler will go inside this iframe, but still there is no way until I apply an assertion there to make sure that even if I am inside the iframe or not. So for that I'm going to assert Or how about this? First I need to see, oh okay, there's an ID on the heading as well. That could be useful for me. So driver dot find element by dot ID. I'll pass in the ID and I'll get its text. Right, and I'll try to save this inside a string, since you can see this as a string. Let's name it iframe text. You can name it whatever you want. I just try to make things more relevant. So now let's try to do an assertion here. Assert equal iframe text is, and I'll just paste this here. Okay, now this will make sure that if I am inside the iframe or not, right? And to be more certain, I'll just do a print statement which would say I am inside the iframe, which says iframe text, right? So now this will print this text here, right? That will make it certain that I am inside the iframe or not. Now let's try to run this and see how that works. So the browser opens, URL gets hit. It's going to take a bit of a time to load. Once it loads, it's going to go inside this iframe, and there we go. So you can see that I'm inside the iframe, which says this is a sample page, which was actually this text. Now if I change this text and say I'll do it pages, right? Just a minor change, and see how that goes. Now this time it will go inside the iframe, but again the condition is not going to fulfill and this test case will fail. So that's one of the ways to handle iframe. Now okay, there you go, that says my test case has failed. So it was actually expecting this is a sample page, but actual was this is a sample pages, right? So this, and since it got failed here, it's not even printing anything because it didn't go beyond this point. So I'll just make it right, and there we go. It's supposed to work now. I'll just compile it again, and let's try to run it again one more time and see if it passes or not. And there we go, it is passing now. Okay, now one more thing that I would like to mention here is that once you're inside an iframe, think of an iframe is more like a page inside a page. So if you want to go back to your original page, let's say I'm inside this and I want to go back to my original base page, or the default page which I landed onto. So for that we can do like this. So driver dot switch to dot default content, and again, now when I go back to the default content, that means I'm in the white area of this page, as you can see. So but still I have to make sure that am I on the right frame, or maybe on the right content that I want to access. So I have to do another assertion here. And let's see if you could find something meaningful. Let's try to find this text here, right? And do we have an XPath for this? Okay, we do. So I'll just get an XPath for this descriptive text here, and then I'll do an assertion just to be sure, right? So driver dot, I'm already on the default content, find element by dot XPath and pass in the XPath expression here, give it a semicolon. Now remember that this XPath expression is a web element, so if you want to save it inside a web element, you could just name it I'll name it out of iframe, right? You can do that, or there's a different way you can handle it, and that is you can just type in .getText command. Now that getText is a string. Remember, if you do just the XPath part, you don't need to assign a web element identifier here. You could just work with strings, right? But if you don't know what to do with this, then the best choice is to go with a web element. Okay, so now whatever the text that is going to be inside this XPath, well, it's quite obvious that this text is going to be here, but still we'll do an assertion here. Assert dot assert equals, and that would be out iframe, and actual one would be, or how about let's not assert it because the expression is going to be real big. Let's just do a simple print statement and see what do we got here. The text on let's try to make some sense. The text on the default window is, let's do a plus here, plus out of iframe. So now this is going to print whatever text is this, right? So that will make me certain that I am out of the iframe. Now let's try to run this. So what's going to happen now, it's going to open a browser, it's going to hit the URL, it's going to go inside the iframe, assert that this text is present, then it's going to come out of the iframe, look for this text, and then exit and there we go. So you can see that the text on the default window is sample iframe page, which was sample iframe page. There are two iframes, there are two iframes, and so on and so forth. So that is how you can actually handle an iframe. So I'm on this page where I have these simple drag and drop boxes. Now this box could be dragged and placed here. So if I do that, as you can see that it turns into a colored box, and if I remove it from there, then well, I need to refresh this to get it back to its original state. Now when it comes to drag and drop, there are two elements. The first one is draggable, that could be moved from one location to the other, while there is dropped, where this little guy could be placed, right? So in order to handle both of them, it is important that the item that needs to be dragged has a DOM element associated to it, and as I inspect for it, I can see there's an ID associated with the draggable ID, right? While if I look into the drop here box, and do we have something, and there's also an ID associated with the droppable. So there would be instances that you might not find an ID associated with either one of the items or maybe both of them, so you could just work with the XPath instead, right? So to handle the drag and drop easily, Selenium provides us with a function called action chains. Now action chains actually handle the mouse or keyboard movement, or mouse location. You could just work with any of the actions that could be performed with a mouse click, or maybe a right click, or scroll up or scroll down. So that all of that could be handled with action chains command, right? So let's try to do that on a different test again. So I'll just type in test public void drag, and I'm gonna name this as drag and drop method. Do I need an interrupt exception? I don't actually. Let's try to hit the URL first. Driver.get. No, I don't need the iframe one. I need this droppable one. Well, once we do that, you will be able to see that my code is going to land on the iframes page first. That is because I have kept the iframe URL in my before clause or before annotation. That means that any test that could run or that will run, now this takes precedence over everything. So you will see that it's going to fall on this page first, and then immediately it will navigate to droppable item here, right? So now once I'm on it, let's try to get driver.find element by .id, and let's give the ID, let's name it, or what was the ID again? Oh, the ID was draggable. So I'll just pick this up and type in like this. Also, let's try to get it inside our web element variable. And no, I don't need to click on it at this point. And also let's try to identify, yeah, just like that. Okay, now I have identified both of the elements and I've named them. The first one is drag, while the other one, on which I need to drop the item, is drop. So in order to actually perform that, I need action chains. In order to work with the drag and drop, as I mentioned before, we need action chains. So for that, I'm going to type in actions, action. Now this is an object, and action dot drag and drop dot perform. Right. So also let's pause this script for maybe 3 seconds to see if it's actually happening or not. I need to import the library for that, and there we go. So let's try to run this. What I expect to happen is it should select this box, pick it up and drop it here. That is what I want this to happen. Okay, now let's try to run this and see how it goes. As I said, that it's going to open the frames page first, and I'm on the frames page. Once this gets loaded, it's going to navigate to the drop-in. As you can see that the drag and drop happened perfectly fine. Now I'm going to share the link of this website in the description of this video, so you can do a lot of practice, and I expect the viewers to actually do a hands-on once they're watching this video, right? That is the best way to actually learn automation testing, that whatever you're seeing, whatever you're watching, you implement it on simultaneously while you're looking at it, right? So thank you for watching, and goodbye.